People ask me about aliens and I notice something immediately. They always ask it the wrong way. They say, "Are they out there?" They say, "Why have they not called us?" They say, "Where is everybody?" As if everybody is supposed to be home right now, sitting by the telephone, waiting for our particular civilization to finally get its act together and pick up a radio transmitter. That is the part that I find so wonderfully, painfully wrong about the whole discussion. The question is not where, the question is when. Let me tell you something about the universe that most people have not sat down and really absorbed, not in their bones, not in the way it deserves to be absorbed. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. Now, people say that number and it slides right off them because a billion is already incomprehensible to a human brain that evolved to count mammoth bones and seasonal harvests. So, let me try a different approach. Imagine a forest so large it stretches beyond anything you can see, and it is completely dark. Not dim, not twilight, but absolutely pitch black. The kind of dark you get when there is nothing, no moon, no city glow, nothing at all. And in this forest, live fireflies. Millions of them scattered across billions of square meters of trees and undergrowth. And each firefly, when it reaches maturity, flashes its little light. One single flash, and then the light goes out forever. Now here is the thing I want you to understand. Two fireflies can share the same square meter of ground. They can live in the same blade of grass, technically overlapping in space. But if one flashes at midnight and the other does not flash until 4 in the morning, they will never see each other. Each one will flash its tiny light into the absolute darkness, find nothing responding, and conclude, reasonably but incorrectly, that it is utterly alone in the universe. That is the Fermi Paradox. Not a mystery of space, a tragedy of time. Now, the honest, beautiful, slightly uncomfortable physics underneath this metaphor is worth unpacking carefully, because the numbers are not fuzzy here. They are precise, and they are brutal. The Milky Way galaxy formed roughly 13 billion years ago. Within about 1 to 2 billion years of that formation, the first generation of stars had already lived fast and died violently, seeding the interstellar medium with the heavy elements, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron, silicon, that complex chemistry absolutely requires. You cannot build a nervous system out of hydrogen and helium alone. You need the periodic table. And the periodic table had to be cooked inside stellar cores and then scattered across space through supernova explosions, like a chemistry set being thrown at a wall over and over until the pieces finally spread far enough to land somewhere useful. By the time you account for this first generation of stellar enrichment, the Milky Way had stable, metal-rich, sun-like stars sitting in the galactic habitable zone, capable of hosting chemically complex planetary systems, roughly 8 to 9 billion years ago. Let me say that again, not to be dramatic, but because the arithmetic deserves emphasis. The physical conditions necessary for complex life as we understand it were already in place 8 to 9 billion years ago. Our solar system did not even begin to condense out of its gas cloud until about 4.6 billion years ago, which means there was a window of roughly 3 to 4 billion years, during which civilizations could have risen, run their entire course, and dissolved back into silence before a single atom in our sun had been pulled together by gravity into anything resembling a star. Think about what 4 billion years of head start means. Life on Earth has been running for about 4 billion years, and in that time it went from single-celled chemistry experiments floating in warm ocean water to whatever this is, a species that can build a machine that thinks, launch objects to the edge of the solar system, and decode the fundamental forces of nature. If you gave another civilization that same 4 billion year biology, plus another 3 billion year head start on top of that, you are not talking about a civilization that is a little more advanced. You are talking about something so far beyond our comprehension that calling it a civilization the way we use the word is probably the wrong approach entirely. And those civilizations, if they existed, are gone. Not hidden, not quiet, gone. The stars they orbited have completed their full life cycles. The planets they built on have been consumed or gone cold. Their signals have been traveling through space for so long that the universe itself has expanded around them, stretching their electromagnetic footprints into frequencies so redshifted they have long since merged with the background noise of the cosmos. Now here is where I want to make a sharp turn into thermodynamics. Because thermodynamics does not care about your feelings, and it has a very specific and unwelcome thing to say about technological civilizations. The second law of thermodynamics is, in my view, one of the most brutally honest statements ever extracted from physical reality. Entropy increases. Ordered systems decay. Energy gradients, the differences in energy concentration that allow complex work to be done, tend toward equilibrium. A civilization is, at its core, a machine for consuming energy gradients and using them to maintain and increase local complexity. You eat food, which represents a chemical energy gradient, and you use that to build proteins, think thoughts, write symphonies, and manufacture radio telescopes. But the planet has a finite energy budget, and a civilization that grows its energy consumption exponentially, as every technological civilization on Earth has done, runs headlong into a resource wall at a pace that is genuinely terrifying when you map it out mathematically. The physicist Nikolai Kardashev described civilization development in terms of energy consumption scales, and if you take even a conservative estimate of exponential energy growth and apply it to a finite planetary biosphere, you find that a civilization has perhaps tens of thousands of years, maybe hundreds of thousands under optimistic assumptions, before the energetic and material demands of sustaining its technological complexity exceed what the local environment can supply. Hundreds of thousands of years sounds like a long time to a human being. On the scale of a 13 billion-year galaxy, it is a flash. It is less than a single frame in a film running at cosmic speed. And that window, that brief communicative window during which a civilization is both technically sophisticated enough to broadcast signals and not yet dead, collapsed, or transformed into something that communicates in ways we have no capacity to detect, that window is precisely the flash of the firefly. The terrifying implication is not that technological civilizations are rare. They may be quite common. The terrifying implication is that even if they are common, the chance of two of them being in their communicative window at the same time, close enough in space that signals can traverse the distance within the window, is vanishingly small. You would need to have the fireflies flashing in synchrony, and there is no physical mechanism that synchronizes them. Each one rises according to the local conditions of its star, its planetary chemistry, its evolutionary contingencies. Each one burns for its brief flash and then goes dark at its own pace. Now I want to talk about the light itself, because this is the part that gives me a particular feeling I cannot quite name. Something between wonder and a kind of melancholy that I think is completely appropriate to the situation. Light travels at roughly 300,000 kilometers per second. That sounds fast. For practical human purposes, it is fast. But the Milky Way is 100,000 light-years across. A signal broadcast from a civilization on the other side of the galaxy takes 100,000 years to reach us. If that civilization was broadcasting 10 million years ago, the leading edge of their signal passed through our region of space 9,900,000 years ago, when our ancestors were small-brained primates walking the African savanna with no concept of electromagnetic radiation and certainly no radio dishes. The signal swept through. It found no one listening. It continued past us and has now traveled 10 million years away in the other direction, thinning and stretching and redshifting as it goes, until the cosmic expansion of space itself has done what no mere distance could fully accomplish. It has diluted the signal below any threshold of detection. There is a horizon, a relativistic decay horizon, past which the signal is not just faint but genuinely unrecoverable, absorbed into the thermodynamic floor of the universe. We are not missing the signals because we are not looking hard enough. We are missing them because we are looking at the right patch of sky at the wrong point in cosmic time, and the signals that correspond to our point in cosmic time have not arrived yet, or were so ancient that they washed over a planet of microbes and left no impression. Let me be honest about something. There is a version of this argument that people find depressing, and I understand that. The idea that we might be cosmically isolated, not because life is rare, but because the timing simply did not work out, has a coldness to it that is genuinely difficult to sit with. But I want to push back on calling it depressing, because I think that reaction comes from a misidentification of what would actually be satisfying. The fantasy of finding another civilization right now, of tuning a radio telescope and hearing structured signals coming back, is seductive precisely because it would confirm a comfortable story, the story that the universe is arranged for our comfort, that it is scaled to human time frames, that our brief technological moment happens to coincide with other brief technological moments scattered conveniently across the galaxy. But the universe is not arranged for our comfort. The universe is arranged according to mathematics, and the mathematics of temporal probability is completely indifferent to what would make us feel less lonely on a Tuesday afternoon. What the mathematics actually tells us is something far more extraordinary and far more honest. It tells us that the emergence of a technological civilization capable of asking these questions is an event of extraordinary rarity, not in space, but in time. That the 13.8 billion year history of the universe has been mostly silent, mostly dark, populated by stars burning through their fuel with no one watching, galaxies colliding with no one to record the event, supernovae scattering the building blocks of chemistry across the interstellar medium for billions of years before the right conditions assembled in the right sequence to produce something that could look back and notice. And here we are, right now, in this moment, on this particular rock, a collection of atoms that coalesced from an ancient supernova has organized itself into a structure capable of measuring the expansion rate of the universe, of detecting gravitational waves from black hole mergers a billion light-years away, of reconstructing the physical history of the cosmos from its first fractions of a second. That is not a consolation prize for missing the aliens. That is the thing itself. The temporal isolation is real. The arithmetic of the firefly problem is brutal and honest, and does not bend for wishful thinking. Ancient civilizations almost certainly rose and burned and vanished into silence before our planet existed. Future civilizations, if they ever arise from whatever our descendant species becomes, may sweep through a galaxy that is equally silent, equally post-technological, equally marked by the aftermath of a billion brief flashes of awareness now long extinguished. But the physics of this situation, when you actually hold it and turn it around and look at it from all sides, reveals something that I find more genuinely astonishing than any version of the comfortable story. The universe does not care about continuity. It does not pass a baton. Each civilization that rises to awareness does so entirely on its own, decoding the laws of nature from scratch, reinventing mathematics from first principles, staring at the same stars and arriving at the same inverse square laws and the same speed of light and the same thermodynamics. There is a kind of universality in that which I find deeply moving in a way I cannot fully articulate. Not a spiritual universality, but a physical one. The same equations govern the nucleosynthesis in a star that lived 10 billion years ago and the nuclear reactions we study in accelerators today. A physicist in a civilization that flourished 8 billion years ago, if such a thing existed, would have derived the same quantum mechanics, the same general relativity, the same statistical mechanics that we have derived. The laws do not change. The universe does not update its physics package for new civilizations. That means the isolation is real, but the truth we have discovered is shared, not through communication, but through the sheer uncompromising consistency of physical law across all of time. We are not reading a message from our predecessors. We are arriving independently at the same description of reality that they arrived at, separated by billions of years, connected by nothing except the invariant structure of the universe itself. And I want to end on this, not to wrap things up neatly, because neat conclusions are usually dishonest about the actual roughness of the situation, but because it points at something worth sitting with. The most precise measurement of our situation is this. We exist in a brief window of organized complexity that will not last forever and was not always possible. The atoms in your body are older than the solar system. The information encoded in your nervous system took 4 billion years of evolutionary iteration to assemble. The physics you can describe from memory, on a quiet afternoon with a piece of chalk and a blackboard, represents the collective decoding effort of a civilization that has been at it seriously for perhaps 400 years out of a planetary history of 4 billion. That is not a long time. That is a single heartbeat in geological terms, a fraction of a frame in cosmic terms. And yet, in that heartbeat, the universe has become aware of itself in at least one location. The equations governing its own behavior have been read back to it by a small collection of its own atoms standing on a rocky surface in a minor spiral arm of an average galaxy. The loneliness is real. The temporal asynchrony is real. The cold arithmetic of missed connections across a billion years of cosmic history is real and honest, and does not pretend otherwise. But the fact that the arithmetic can be done at all, here, now, by us, using the same mathematics that would have described the civilizations that burned and vanished before we arrived, that is the thing I find genuinely beautiful, not comforting, beautiful. There is a difference, and the difference matters. The firefly does not need another firefly to validate its flash. The light is real. The flash happened. And in the brief moment of its illumination, it saw, with perfect clarity, the same dark forest that every other firefly across all of time has seen, lit by its own brief and unrepeatable glow.